All right, everybody. Welcome to the Relatively Relevant AI podcast video session, whatever we're calling it these days. You got myself, Chad Sanderson, and then Lori Kirkland's here. Say hi, Lori.
Hey, everyone.
All right. Today, we're going to be doubling down on and trying to explain what we mean by humanness, right? Our whole goal is to increase the humanness in business because we know, based on what some of the experts are saying, that that's going to be a huge differentiator for people out there. But what does it really mean, right? At the end of the day, if you engage with us, what is it you're going to experience when we talk about humanness? Where are we coming from? And so we're just going to break it down, hopefully give you some takeaways and have the conversation about it. And so we'll let Lori start and we'll just kind of get going.
Great. Thanks, Chad. Humanness, for those of you who don't know, is probably one of my favorite topics. I am a lover of humanity. I think people are crazy complex works of art, and we are always creating stories every day in our lives about, what this means and what that means. But I think that in business, we've really gotten away from letting people be their whole selves at work. Now, that doesn't mean, coming to work in your pajamas and never getting yourself presentable, right? Or ready like that. And it doesn't mean hurting others or being able to be mean to others. Really, what it means is allowing yourself to embrace some of your differences and your quirks that actually make you really special and can help you contribute, because we each have our own points of view, right? How I see the world is not how somebody else sees the world. But those different perspectives really do help the collective of humanity when we are living true to the values that I see as a human being, and allowing others to also live in their own values. So when I think of humanness in work, I think of creating spaces and creating thinking that allows for more than a cog in the wheel or a corporate robot, so to speak, right? Like to get rid of the, all the rules, the HR rules. Yes, they're there for a reason, but let's just be good people to each other. You know what I mean? Like, let's just really lean into the things that our humanness, makes us such an advanced species on, which is creativity, it's love, it's connection, it's innovation, it's kind of the human spirit, right? It's a lot of things that in today's corporate world, we don't have a lot of room for, right? There's just not a lot in the procedure manual for, Lori liking dancing or like to play music all the time, right? Like there's just not a lot of that. But the exciting thing about AI is that we are in the midst of a change, right? It's happening. It has not happened because it's going to be happening for the next, several years on. But there's this great opportunity to start really leaning into, right? Who are we as people and what do we want to contribute to the greater good? And so when I think of humanness, I think that in terms of AI, we have the opportunity to use tools that we don't really use in the workplace today to better understand and conceptualize what AI can do, not how it fits into a list, but what its real power could be for humanity. And the way that we're going to get there fastest and with the greatest positive systems for humanity is by each of us embracing our own humanness.
And I think there's a lot there that if you think about the corporate structure, the way that a lot of people we work with, what they have to deal with, there's layers upon layers upon layers of policy and structure, and certain things have to happen or certain things can't happen in the workplace. And as a result, I think and part of this is maybe even societal, there's just a general level of anxiety around just having an honest conversation with someone and giving somebody the benefit of the doubt, right? Like we're smart enough to know when somebody's not being cool and when they're really, being aggressive versus them truly not understanding, but maybe not being able to express that in the right way. And so I think from that humanity perspective is, I think, starting at the base point. And this is a reason why, if you look at some of our branding and our go-to-market, we start with the DNA strand. We start at the basest level of what does it mean to be human. And there's certain things that I think we all need to agree upon, which is look, everybody deserves to be heard. Everybody deserves respect. Everybody deserves, a safe place to be themselves, but within the confines of understanding we're trying to achieve something greater as a group, right? There are certain rules of engagement, if you will, in a business environment that we all need to follow, but it doesn't need to be so constrictive that it robs us of the things that make us each so unique, which is our perspectives, our experiences, the way we look at something, the way that we come together with others and solve problems that an individual by themselves wouldn't be able to solve. And I think there's going to be a need. There's a huge opportunity for those individuals who want to kind of lead that change, to take this time where AI is shaking things up, robotics is shaking things up, editable biology, I'll get it out eventually, quantum computing, all of that stuff is creating this confluence where I think there's an opportunity for individuals to really understand that the power of what we as a species bring to this equation is either going to make or break us.
Yeah, I love that, right? It's humanity who's going to save humanity, right? In the world of divide
I
right
don't want
now.
to make it too big for people.
I'm just saying, like, if we look through history, it's always been, right, the people who have really implemented change. And with technology, in the corporate workplace, right? Like, this is just an opportunity. We either continue on as is and go forward, and we live with all of the rules and decisions and policies that were put in place with good intentions. I always assume that, right? But I can share with you in my last position that I remember going and digging deep and saying, where did this policy come from? Or why are we doing this step? And nobody had the answer. It, let's say post-dating 12 years ago, something was implemented. And what was more interesting is that people were afraid to let go of that policy that wasn't serving us any longer and wasn't, like, it wasn't serving a purpose anymore. And it was actually causing more inefficiencies. So to me, the human skills, like understanding that you do have freedom of emotions or freedom of choice, really, it's more about that empowering yourself to be honest and look at and say, hey, here's a situation in front of me. Is this actually serving us any longer? No. Okay, then you know what? I'm going to make the choice to let it go. Now, how much work that is to let go may also influence your decision. But hey, we got a crazy, quantum machinery in here, right? Our brain is insane that we can make those decisions fairly quickly. But it's going to be our human skills of saying, okay, what am I going to replace it with that comes back to each individual human, right? Like, if you're going to release something, there's going to be space for something else. And that's where we as leaders have the power in the corporate world to say, you know what, let's actually work on a problem that's bigger than just automating a chain of emails. Let's work on something that's bigger than a report generated, right? Let's start thinking about really big problems so that we can empower more individuals to contribute with their own human skills.
Well, and I think that's an important piece of it, right? I think it was Musk, and maybe it was in the Elon Musk biography, where they talked about how he wanted to eliminate, you should eliminate more processes and things than you create. He gets a little aggressive about it, but that's his personality and his approach to it. But that not being so attached to what we did before. And this has been a problem. This isn't new in the AI era. Like, we've seen this for years. Any organization that faces change, there is natural built-in resistance. Like, hey, we that's not the way we do things here, or we tried that before and it's not going to work this time. Well, there's a lot of questions there, right? How did you try it? Who was involved? What was the goal on the other side that you were trying to hit? And I think for organizations now that are wrestling with, how do I incorporate AI in a way that empowers my employees rather than just displaces them? It changes the equation of what you need from those employees, what you need from those individuals. And then there has to be the question of, is the organization going to be able to identify those skills, help up level them fast enough, and at the same time tackle the structural changes or the procedural changes in their own businesses to serve all of the constituents? I don't think that that's a realistic ask, quite frankly. I think it was a Simon Sinek video I saw where he talked about it being on the shoulders of the corporations to teach individuals coming into the workplace things they hadn't learned in their straight education. It's an older video, a couple years old, but I think it's still applicable today. A lot of the people I work with are like, oh, well, I'm just going to wait for my company to tell me what I need to do. And if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're going to turn around and the first thing they're going to tell you is they don't need to tell you anything anymore because you're not going to be relevant in this creation of the future.
Well, if you're looking for them, Chad years ago introduced me to the concept of critical thinking versus order taking, right? If you're looking for somebody to give you a list of things to do, that is going to go away. But if you're looking at problems to be solved and use the use of critical thinking, look, there's so many amazing ways that we each use our critical thinking every day. But the roles that we have defined today don't really give access to a lot more than kind of some standardized generalizations that worked perfectly when the circumstances were X, but now you're 10 years later and the circumstances are Y. Like right now, our circumstances are we have AI. So it doesn't even matter what you've done in the past, like even just recycling those, right? Could give you fresh ideas because the people are different. The circumstances are different. We're at a different time, right? Nowhere in our history have we ever been post-pandemic before, right? Where the whole world had a reset of, hey, we all kind of reset our lives and then got back to work and we're all like, it's not really working anymore. So it gives us great opportunity. And if you describe the process as you did of all the things to think about, it can become really heavy for us as leaders to be like, man, you know what, that's so much. I can't even go there. But what we can do as leaders is start asking different questions, right? Quit asking, what work did you complete for the last 2 weeks? And say, what did you learn that's getting us closer to solving this big problem, right? Like it's small little changes like that will allow each individuals to understand that the goal is not work and activity for the sake of work, but it's actually working towards a greater destination, right? And that does put the responsibility on us as leaders to start thinking about, hey, where do we want to go? What's the destination? But it also can help us resolve that need to change everything in a corporation and start with, I'm going to start with changing the thinking of how I do it so the people around me then can also have the opportunity to change the way their thinking is. And that's really how humanity works with changes anyways, is it's got to be kind of your whole self into it. And the more purpose you feel, the better the results will be.
But it reminds me of like whenever I've heard somebody talk about or read anything about like the moon shots, right? Like the big audacious goals, right? And what's it we don't know how it's gonna happen, but this is what we're gonna try and accomplish. I don't want to get controversial, but like the moon landing and things like that. I don't want to get into whether it happened or not. We want to talk about like the big things that we can solve, right? And there's not a textbook for that. There's not a list of this is how you get from here to there. And when you have AI in the picture, when you have these technologies coming in, there's a huge opportunity. You've got the reset from the pandemic that you've mentioned. You've got this new technology that has the potential to deliver a significant change. Everybody wants to debate how big of a change it is, but it is going to be significant in one way or another. And at the end of the day, then the question becomes, where do you start? And the only place I can figure out to start that makes the most sense is with myself. It's with my mindset. And there's a concept that we teach a lot called, positive intent. In every engagement you're about to have, engage in it with positive intent. Clear your head of whatever the assumptions or things that you've thought before are, and just go into it and say, hey, I'm looking for a positive outcome. I'm going to go into this engagement with the positive mindset that I'm going to help this individual or help us move in a direction, hopefully that will help get us both to where we want to be. That in and of itself has a huge impact. It changes your energy. It changes the way you communicate. It changes the respect and response you get from other human beings and other individuals. It just is a simple mindset shift as a starting point. So to Lori's point, I have a tendency to think about the totality of it and make it really heavy. And it is for me at times heavy, but if you need a starting point, just start with that mindset and start thinking about, all right, I'm going to go positive intent to up level the human skills, my humanity in this situation to achieve an outcome that is positive for all involved without predefining what that is.
Oh, that's really good, right? It's not, I have a solution and I want to convince everybody to get to that solution, which happens in the corporate workplace all the
All the
time.
time.
We can all think of horror stories about that where immediately an idea was out and you're like, yeah, that's not going to work. But a leader wanted to take down the path and 18 months later, it didn't work. But there is the ability when we kind of place our egos down, right? For some reason in our hierarchical world, we've said leaders have to know everything and they have to know all the answers. And the truth is most leaders I know of Fortune 500 companies, of really big companies, right? They're really buried under the weight of, I don't know, right? So yes, they say things, but like, hey, let's help everybody out and start thinking about what are the bigger problems we want to solve. But as Chad said, with positive intent, if you take a breath and take a bigger perspective, like think of it like a coach being up in the player box at a football game, right? Communicating down with the coach on the field, right? If you're looking at something from a higher perspective, you can actually start to see, oh, actually this little movement over here is impacting this over here, and you can get a different perspective. That's where I think we have this great opportunity as leaders is to take a step back, look up from a higher perspective, and look for a win-win for everyone, because the universe is abundant. And if we really do like give ourselves the space and time, it can happen so that there's a win-win solution for everybody involved. And I think some of my most magical times in technology and in growing teams and growing companies has been when kind of egos were placed at the door. There's not one, everyone has their own piece to contribute. And you get in a room and you brainstorm and you just kind of sit there, and there isn't it has to be done in this hour. Cause I don't know if you guys realize that creativity, you can't schedule it. You kind of have to give room and space for it. But maybe you spend a day in a conference room with just the right people who could solve the problem, and you let that develop. And probably 10 out of 10 times when you actually do that with purpose, not with a defined solution, you come out so much further ahead on the problem than you would have anything that you thought going in.
Well, and to have the right to be a part of that conversation, to earn the right to be included in that type of free form. I mean, it's constrained by time, 2-3 hours, whatever, 30 minutes in a conference room. There are constraints, but in the free formness of that, to be able to show up in a way that's positive for the group is a different human skill set than waiting around for someone to say, hey, you need to do X more of these activities, Y more of these activities, and this, that, the other thing, and giving you kind of the recipe, right? This is a scenario where you have to be able to demonstrate that you have or are on the path to up-leveling your creative thinking, that you can be also analytical and understand that some of these solutions may not actually work just given constraints, or these are the constraints we would have to remove in order for that to work. You have to also be able to flow and get into that state of flow with a group of diverse people, which is back to your emotional intelligence. And then understanding how all of that is affected by, where you're at in your body and what's going on, in your own headspace at the time. There's a lot of awesome opportunity, but to be invited to the party, so to speak, you have to at least be demonstrating that you can work in that type of environment. And this goes back to, for me, why, hey, it's great that everybody's learning how to write prompts and you can do all of this stuff in the GPT models and stuff. But what you're putting into those models is a direct result of your own thinking and your own approach to certain situations. That's where the magic is. And so our goal is to, I believe, help you on the other side of the coin, not only leverage the tools, but up level the skills that are going to make your use of those tools even more impactful. Is that fair?
I love it. And I think just to align with what you're saying, Chad, I think it's right. It's about each of us remembering that we have something special to give, and that giving to the group your special skills does not take away from somebody else. In fact, it's the contributing. It makes you feel good and it makes the group feel good. So anything we can do to really improve our humanness is just going to improve our connection and overall really improve the results for an organization.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. We look forward to talking to you all soon. Don't hesitate to subscribe. We'll see you soon.